up today on page Kuf Chaf Ches. Kuf Chaf Ches. Utzedaka Tatzil Miknasos. So just to, hopefully you listened to some of the ones that I recorded over the last few weeks, but just to reorient ourselves a little bit, we began the third parak. So the third parak is where the Mechaber begins with the premise that this world, and his lashon here is very beautiful, this world is a Beit Sefer LeEmunah, is a school for Emunah. In other words, that all of the experiences that occur to us in this world have the ability to bolster and to help us understand true Emunah. Now, Emunah, according to the Mechaber, is based on three basic principles. Number one, to believe that ultimately, again, this, whatever occurs, is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Yamin shekach Hashem rotze. That's belief number one, that whatever occurs is what the Ribono Shel Olam wants. Number two, to believe that Hakol is Latova, all is for good. And number three, Yamin Shelachol Davar Yesh Siba V'Tachlis. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a purpose. Now, what that means when we say everything has a purpose is that not only is everything purposeful, but everything contains a message from which or through which one can grow. So these are the three pillars of Emunah. Everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and whatever occurs is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Number two, Hakol is Latova, all is for good. And number three, that from every circumstance there is a siba, there is a purpose, and there is a tachlis. I should say there's a reason, and there's a tachlis, there's a purpose. Okay, so remember again, we spent a lot of time, even before Tisha B'Av, speaking about the episode with the police officer getting pulled over, what you do with that. So the Mechaber is going to give a couple of more examples like that. So page Kuf Chaf Ches. Utzdaka tatzil miknasos. Kana makom l'tzayin. Here is the place where we should highlight the idea. Shaharbe knasos v'hefsedim kaspiyim bo'im la'adam mitnei she'ino nosin da'it tzedakah. That the Mechaber says something very interesting, that many times people suffer financial loss, and financial loss, he says, either knasos, meaning penalties, financial penalties, or financial losses, sometimes because a person is not charitable. I will say, now I want to be clear what the Mechaber is trying to say over here. Is the Mechaber saying that every single time I lose money or suffer a financial setback, it's because I didn't give enough tzedakah? No. No one could make a statement like that. If somebody were to claim a statement like that, it would be theologically egregious. What the Mechaber is saying, I will say, is that we have to recognize that everything that happens to us in life is purposeful. There's no such thing as a random act. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu visits a particular set of circumstances upon me, I have to ask myself why. I have to ask myself why. I have to ask myself why this is happening. So my job is to try to figure out what can I learn from these circumstances. Now, am I going to be mechaving to the right message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had for me? Maybe yes, maybe no. But here's the great part. Even if I derive meaning from my circumstances, and the meaning of my circumstances are not the exact message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was trying to convey, I will say if I grow from that message, if I transcend from that message, if I evolve from that message, even if it's not necessarily the intended message, there's still something beautiful that comes out from that. So the idea over here is I suffer a financial setback. So I'll say, so generally if we suffer a financial setback, so generally the greatest mussar we generally have for ourselves is, I don't know, maybe I need a new financial advisor, or I need a new job, or I need a new this. But sometimes we fail to look at it through the lens of a life hashkafa. So the Mechaber says that very often when we suffer financial setback, that has to do with the fact that we're not Balei Tzedakah. Now I want to also point out, by the way, when we speak about being Balei Tzedakah, remember, we know that money is not the only way through which a person gives tzedakah. Sometimes when we say a person is not enough of a Baal Tzedakah, also that can mean a person can give a lot of their money, but they give nothing of themselves. So it's true, there's a great schus of going in and giving your money. But being about tzedakah also means being about chesed, also means giving of yourself. Quotes over here, Muva b'Gemara, Shekishem shemizonosav shel adam k'tzuv lo mirash Hashanah, kach chesronosav v'hafseidav k'tzuv lo mirash Hashanah. This is amazing. So most are familiar with the first part of the Gemara, not as familiar with the second part of the Gemara, which is a person's mizonos. My parnasa, a person's parnasa is katsuv, is established at the beginning of the year. Meaning one of the gzeras of Rosh Hashanah is how much money I'm going to make over the year. But not only that, what's also established on Rosh Hashanah is how much money I'm going to lose over the course of the year. Now watch this. Now that loss is preordained. The same way that the earnings are preordained, so the loss is preordained as well. Im yiska yitin l'tzdakas mashinig zarlav lahafsid. So if a person is meritorious in judgment, then that amount that was ordained to be quote unquote lost, I will give to tzedakah. Or as opposed to on a technical level, because that satisfies the divine decree. In other words, there's a certain amount of money that's supposed to come into my pocket, and there's a certain amount of money that's supposed to leave my pocket. So if I'm zocha, the money that leaves will ultimately go towards tzedakah. V'emlo yiska. But if a person is not meritorious, yafsid osam sikumim al knasos b'misim eitzel rofim b'kil kulim uchidamer. I will say, if you think about this, by the way, I always find it amazing. You ever get, I'm not saying it happens to me, but maybe it's happened to someone else. You ever get one of these speeding tickets through these cameras? When you open up that envelope and you see that picture of your license plate, your heart sinks because you think, oh my gosh, as they say, like Reis gevar von Geld, how much I have just, like, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's such a loss. And it's not even like, at least there was if there's a police officer who pulls me over and gives me a speeding ticket, okay, at least someone's making a parnasa, right? At least, Baruch Hashem is fulfilling his quota. At least my loss is going to be his benefit. Here, mamish, like there's a machine. There's a machine. So it's a big muss. Like the fact that camera caught me. There's a whole bunch of other cars over there. It's hashgacha pratis. It's hashgacha pratis. So that meaning I was supposed to lose that $50. That is, and unfortunately, perhaps had I given it to tzedakah, the loss would have quote unquote occurred, but it wouldn't have had to occur through the speeding ticket. He goes on. Maaser of Yochanan and Zakkai. So we'll see. We'll listen to this. Maaser. It's called Maaser of Yochanan and Zakkai. Shemoti Mekipurim harulo b'chalom kama nigzer al b'nei achoso lahavsid ba'osa shalom. Yochanan and Zakkai has a dream, and in that dream he is shown that his nephews, b'nei achoso, his nephews, are supposed to lose a certain amount of money that year. Specifically, Sheva meos dinarim b'diur, 700 dinar. His nephews were supposed to lose. Ma'asar Yochanan and Zakkai. So what did Yochanan do? The Meshach was like last paragraph. Kuf Chav Chatz. The Meshach Hashana ba aleim pam achar pam v'hotzim mehem tzedakah b'chominei tirutzim u'b'shichnuim pam l'matara zu pam l'matara acheres ad shegava mehem kimat eskala sikum chutz mishiva asar dinar shel his big lachachzen. So what does Yochanan ben Zakkai do? He keeps going over to his nephews for different tzedakah causes. I'm collecting for a kala. I'm collecting for an almana. I'm collecting for this. I'm collecting for that. And over the course of the year, he extracts the lion's share of the amount, but he fails to collect 17 dinar. There's still 17 dinar. Top of Kuf Chav test. Get ready for this, Mr. Both say, this is not like a mice. This is a Gemara. Bera Yom Kippurim. Hofia bebesim shel b'nei achosa pakid mi beis hakesar ubiyado ligbos mehem shiva asar dinarim. They both say what happens on Yom Kippur. Erev Yom Kippur, the Caesar's tax collector shows up at the house, knocks on the door. He says, the Caesar demands of you the amount, 17 dinar. 17 dinar. Now, the nephews, right, the Mishpachar gets very nervous. Say, oh my gosh, maybe the tax collector is going to be back. In other words, maybe now the tax collector has put his eyes on our money and he's going to go ahead and come back. He's going to go ahead and come back and want to collect the rest of our money afterwards. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai puts their mind at ease. He says, don't worry. That 17 dinar, that was the last of your responsibility. The Caesar is not going to be back to collect anymore. We'll say one more paragraph and then we'll stop. He says, Shalu also, so the nephews say, Uncle, Rabbi Yochanan, where do you know? How do you know that the Caesar is not going to come back for more money? Perhaps you have an in with the tax collector. Perhaps you're a Navi. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. I don't have any connections with the IRS. I have no connections. I'm not a Navi, but rather Aval Kesher Ha'achroi Harashi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeshli. I do have a connection, what he calls im ha'achroi harashi. I do have a connection with the Ribono Shel Olam. Kvar betchila Hashem her li b'chalomi kama kesef tafsidu v'gavisi mechem kimat es kol hasikum l'tzedakah nish'aru rak shiva asar hadinar ha'elu. So he says, I do have a kesher with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and through that I was able to understand the amount of money that you will lose this year, and I was able to collect almost all of it from you in the form of tzedakah, except for this last 17 dinar. So we'll say one more paragraph and then we'll stop. Eskol shva meos dinar makorchem leptavoschem ubelive agmas nefesh al mamshir letimion ve'atem zechisim litrom as hakesef lemataros chashuvos ve'vachtem kevel kiflayim bezechuyos ubitzar ubischar ala tzedakah. So he goes on, I'm just doing this quickly because of time. He goes on and he says, and no, ultimately again, this money that you lost, it was preordained for you to lose. But Baruch Hashem, you were zocheh to give the lion's share of that money to tzedakah. What's the next paragraph? Hitztaru b'nei achosa ma'od al terchosa rabba amar lo dodene yakar madua lo amart alo mitchila shekach nigzar. So now the nephews feel bad. Why do they feel bad? They feel bad because remember what was happening. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was coming back and forth to them throughout the entire year, trying to get money. So they said, Uncle, why didn't you just come to us at the beginning of the year and say, listen, I saw in the Chalam that you're going to lose 700 dinar this year. So give it to me all right now in tzedakah. We would have written you one check and you would have been done. We would have fulfilled our obligation. You would have fulfilled your obligation. Ultimately, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, last line of page Kuf Chaf Tes, Ratzisi shetisku laseis tzedakah l'shem shamayim, v'lo mishum shemamale nigzar kach. So ultimately, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, had I told you that I saw the divine decree is that you're going to lose 700 dinar, and you could either give it to me to tzedakah or you could pay it in taxes, then of course you would have given it to me in tzedakah, and you would have not gotten the full schar. I wanted you to get the full schar ultimately again of this act, and therefore I did not divulge to you the reality of your circumstance. So we'll have to stop over here. We'll pick up with the rest of this on Monday. But the ultimate yisod being, again, the Mechaber trying to give us just another illustration of somehow HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaches us incredible lessons through the events that occur to us. And sometimes when we suffer financial setbacks, sometimes again when we suffer financial loss, the Mechaber tells us that I first question I have to ask myself is, am I enough of a Baal Tzedakah? In other words, a Baal Tzedakah with my money, with my actual funds, with my resources, but also again, remember, being a Baal Tzedakah, as much as we said before, is much bigger than just your money. Am I a Baal Tzedakah ultimately again with my kochos hanafshi? Am I a Baal Tzedakah enough with my kochos ha'enoshi, kochos ha'atzmi, my own personal abilities, my own personal kochos? Because sometimes again, what you don't give to the other in one direction, the Ribono Shel Olam extracts from us in different ways. We'll also stop over here. We'll pick up top of Kuf Lamed B'Sha'ah Tova on Monday. All right, we'll say good morning. Let's begin. New parak, Hashem, 5th parak of Sanhedrin, top of Mem, 40a. So how you both can also b'sheva chakiros. So we'll remember again, continuing from the last Mishnah, speaking about the ways in which a Beis Din, Sanhedrin, would go ahead and interrogate witnesses. Now remember, we're specifically speaking about over here, dinei nefashos, because as we've already established before in the previous parak, the drishos v'chakiros, by dinei nefashos, of course, and understandably so, are much more intensive than the drishos v'chakiros of dinei malos for monetary law. So the Gemara says the following. Mishnah says, in 7 different ways. B'sheva chakiros So both can also b'sheva chakiros. They would go and interrogate the witnesses in 7 different ways or 7 different questions. What were they? Shavua, be'eza shavua. First question they would ask them is be'eza shavua. Rashi says, be'eza shavua shel yovel. Shel yovel. And again, I will say we'll discuss ultimately again what these questions specifically mean. But the first question is, what part of the yovel cycle did you see this particular event occurring? Next, be'eza shana. Which year of the Shemitah cycle did you see this particular event occurring? Be'ezeh chodesh. Which month did you see this occurring? Bekama b'chodesh. What day of the month did you see this occurring? Be'ezeh yom. Be'ezeh yom. What day? U'be'ezeh shah. And what hour? Now we'll say, what hour, B'Pashas, as we're going to see later on in the Gemara, means what hour of the day. So meaning all they were asking was it the 3rd hour of the day, the 4th hour of the day, the 7th hour of the day? According to this opinion of the Mishnah, they were not asking for a specific time. It wasn't that I don't need a 2:30 in the afternoon. I just need to know a general hour of the day. Again, we'll discuss this in greater depth. Be'ez hamakom, and what place did the particular event occur? So we'll say this is the opinion of the Tanna Kamma. Rabbi Yossi says the truth is you only really need 3 questions. Be'ez yom, what day did it occur on? Be'ez sha'ah, what time did it occur? And be'ezah makom, what place did it occur? Rabbi Yossi doesn't require, I don't need to know what year of the Yovel cycle, what year of the Shemitah cycle. I don't need to know all of that. I just need to know what day, time, location. Makirin also, the Gemara says the following. Makirim atem also, then the Gemara goes on to the other questions that are asked. They would ask the witnesses, did you recognize or did you know the victim? Did you know the person who was killed? Hitartem bo? Did you give proper hasura to the alleged murderer? Ha'oved avodah zarah. Similarly, if the witnesses were testifying about someone who had worshipped idolatry, esmi avad. What type of idol did the individual worship? Ubema avad. How did he worship the idol? So the Gemara goes weiter. Mishnah says, and I will say, these are the scripted questions that the Sanhedrin must ask. But obviously, it is up to the discretion of the judges to ask more questions. And the more questions you ask, remember again, you have to understand something. And this is still difficult a little bit to wrap your head around. But the goal of a Sanhedrin in a Dinei Nefashas case is to acquit, right? That's the goal, meaning it is a slanted judgment. The goal is to acquit. So the idea over here is the Gemara makes the assumption, the more questions you ask, the greater the statistical probability of the witnesses messing up a piece of information. And once there is a piece of information which is messed up, then again we'll see. But under certain circumstances, the defendant can be acquitted. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, one time Ben Zakkai even asked the witnesses about the stems of the figs. What does this mean? If you look at Rashi says over it's about halfway down in the short lines in Rashi. So one time witnesses came and they testified that they witnessed a murder that took place under a fig tree. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked them, tell me about the stems of the figs. Were the stems thick? Were the stems thin? So the Gemara is giving, we'll see, the Gemara is going to discuss, but the Mishnah is giving this as an example that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai went out of his way to even ask incredibly detailed and to a certain degree unnecessary questions. We'll discuss why that is. Ma bein chakiros lebedikos. So we'll say, what is the distinction between chakiros and bedikos? Remember, again, we spoke about this already in the previous parak. The chakiros, and remember this, what the questions in our Mishnah fall under the category of chakiros. Chakiros are detail-specific and informationally necessary questions. In other words, these ascertain the identity of the perpetrator, the place, the time in the event, and first of all, again, this information also allows for hazama. If this information is not correct, then ultimately the witnesses who are testifying cannot be made into Eidim Zomim. These are called the chakiros. The bedikos are kind of secondary or ancillary questions that are important informationally, but not an absolute necessity. So says the Gemara in chakiros and bedikos. Chakiros, we'll say first of all, line in the Mishnah, when it comes to chakiros, echad omer ini yodea, if one of the witnesses, Rabosai, when answering one of the Hakira questions. Remember, the Hakira questions are the ones we just had in the Mishnah. So when it comes to one of the Hakiros questions, if one of the witnesses says, Eini Yodea, I don't know, Edusan B'Teva, then they're out. We're done. Bedikos, Echad Omer Eini Yodea. Also, when it comes to one of the Bedika questions, and we'll discuss in the Gemara the Bedika questions, when it comes to one of the Bedika questions, Echad Omer Eini Yodea, V'afilu Shnayim Omrim Ein Anu Yodin. The boss say, if one of the witnesses says, I don't know, and even better, if two of the witnesses say, we don't know, Edusan Kayemes. The testimony still stands, which I both say makes sense because the Maisa, again, as we will see, the Bedika questions are important, but they're not an absolute necessity. Echad Chakiros ve'echad Bedikos. I will say whether we're talking about Chakira questions or Bedika questions, Bisman Shemachishin Ze'ezeh, if the witnesses actually contradict each other, then a Dusan Betela. Then Lamaisa, again, when there's any level of witness contradiction, then Lamaisa, again, the entire testimony is going to be batal. Echadomer b'shnayim b'chodesh, ve'echadomer b'shlosha b'chodesh. So we'll say, so remember again, in the Chakira family of questions, one of the questions that is asked is date. Date. When did this occur, right? Everyone agrees, because remember, Machlokes between Rabban and Rabbi Yossi, whether you have to get into the year of the Yovel cycle, year of the Shemitah cycle, but everyone's going to agree you need the date. You need the day of the month. So we'll say, what happens if one of the witnesses says the murder took place on the 2nd of the month? Bless you. One of the witnesses says the murder took place on the 3rd of the month. So we'll say, what's the halacha? We just finished before saying that what? That if witnesses contradict each other, then what? Edus patela. Yet over here, what's the halacha? Edusan kayamas. The testimony stands. Why? Let's listen to this. We'll say we could ascribe their different dates ultimately to the fact that one may be aware that the previous month was made into a malay, and one was not aware that the previous month was a malay, or vice versa, malay or chasr. In other words, remember, every month has the capacity to be either a 29-day month or a 30-day month. So it's possible that they just, meaning when there's one day between them, so it's possible that just one of them didn't hear, was the previous month a malay, was the previous month a chasr. Therefore, again, we do not go ahead and negate their testimony because of the date discrepancy. Ze omer b'shlosha, v'ze omer b'chamisha. But if one says the murder took place on the 3rd of the month, one says the murder took place on the 5th of the month, then also when there's a 2-day discrepancy, edusan b'tela. Good. Echad omer b'shtei shos, ve'echad omer b'shalosh shos. Let's say one says the murder took place on the 2nd hour of the day. One says it took place on the 3rd hour of the day. What's the halacha? Edusan kayemes. The edus stands. Edus stands. Let's say again, we assume, as we're going to see, one of the fundamental machlokas we're going to see around these issues is, do we allow for a margin of error? So the Tanna Kama is clearly saying that yes, we allow for some margin of error. Echad omer b'shalosh ve'echad omer b'chamish edusan b'tela. But if one says the murder took place in the 2nd, one says the murder took place in the 3rd, then Rabbi said that is too much of a discrepancy. Excuse me, in the 5th, I'm sorry, thank you. Then ultimately, again, that is too much of a discrepancy, and the Eidos is batal. Now, Rashi points out to Rabbi Say, because if you have someone claiming that a murder took place in the beginning of the 2nd, and another one claiming the murder took place in the end of the 5th, that leads you with almost a 3-hour discrepancy. So a 3-hour discrepancy already is too much to reconcile, and therefore, again, the Eidos is batal. Rabbi Yehuda says, kayemes. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, even in such a situation, the Eidos will still be kayemes. And again, obviously, we'll explain this machlokas. Well, here, if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, Rabbi Yehuda, it's actually the 3rd wide line in Rashi. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Eidusan kayemes, the kule hai toy inshi. The boss says we're going to see the interesting machlokes over here is going to be how much of a margin of error do we assume people have. So Rabbi Yehuda says even to err a few hours, up to 3 hours, is possible. That is within the margin of error. So we're going to see, interestingly enough, there's no great like yesodistic machlokes over here. The mamish arguing just like in how vigilant people are with details versus how much of a window of a human error is acceptable. Incredible. So Gemara goes like, but yet, there are certain times that everybody will agree that even a 2-hour discrepancy is not good. For example, one witness says the murder took place in the 5th hour. One witness says the murder took place in the 7th hour. What's the halacha? Edusan b'tela. Why, Rabbi Say? Shebechamish chama b'mizrach u'b'sheva chama b'marav. Because Rabbi Say, between the 5th hour and the 7th hour, the sun changes position. In the 5th hour, the sun is in the east. In the 7th hour already, again, remember that's post-midday, so the sun already is beginning its trajectory downward, therefore in the west. So to make that type of error, we assume again the edus is batal. So after we go through all of in this case the chakiros and some additional bedikos, they both say this is all talking about what we do with the first witness. Good. After we finish with the first witness, then what? We bring in the second. So we repeat the same exact process, ultimately again with the second witness. So if we see that the two testimonies align, that they check out, then post and discuss. So now it's interesting Lashon. After we check out both of the witnesses who both testify that Reuven killed Shimon, and now we've accepted their testimony, we officially begin the trial, the court proceedings, but post and discuss. Remember again, how do we begin the court proceedings? We begin the court proceedings with the schus for the defendant. Now Rashi points out over here, remember we spoke about this in the last paragraph. What does that mean? Ilo katlis, it's the fourth wide line. Ilo katlis lo tidchol. Kidarmino perkat de la'el. So what does it mean post and discuss? The way we pass it is we begin the court proceedings by the Sanhedrin saying to the defendant, if you didn't kill anyone, don't be afraid. In other words, we give him chizuk that don't worry, if you mamish didn't kill anyone, if you didn't do anything wrong, things are going to be okay for you. If one of the witnesses come along, if one of the witnesses say, I have the ability to be malamed schus on the defendant, or one of the students, so with Pashtus we're going to see. Remember again, we saw in the last parak, this referred to one of the students who sit in the 3 rows behind the Sanhedrin, and one of the students say, I have the ability to go ahead and be malamed chova, to find guilt for the defendant. In these cases, meshaskin also, we quiet these individuals. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Amar echa min ha'edim yeshli l'lamed alav schos meshaskin also, 5th wide line in Rashi. V'chol shekin im hayabal l'lamed alav chova, the time Amar perka de la'el, so both say this is talking about where there's one witness. So if there's only an eid echad, so Beis Din will not go ahead and accept an eid echad in capital cases. If what about the Talmidim? Look at Rashi. Amar echa min ha-Talmidim hayoshul lifnei hadayanim yesh lilamed alav chov meshaskin also. They both say it's the same thing. If one of the Talmidim are sitting one of the rows behind the Sanhedrin, say, listen, I could advance an argument to convict. We also shut him down. We have no interest in such testimony. On the other hand, but if one of the Talmidim says, I have the ability, I believe, to go ahead and be malamed schus, to go ahead and find something good to say. This doesn't mean malamed schus doesn't mean he's a really nice guy. He's got good midos. Right? Malamed schus means I have the ability to tilt the judgment in his favor. Then what do we do? Listen to this. Ma'alin also. We take him off the bench, mamish, literally. We put him on the Sanhedrin. And he would remain with the Sanhedrin that entire day. We'll discuss about saying the Gemara, the impact of that particular statement. If mamish has something meaningful to contribute, shomen lo, then we listen to him. Even Rabbi say ultimately again, if he says, I have the ability to be malamed schus on myself. Now we will discuss in the Gemara what exactly this case means. Doesn't it mean being malamed schus on himself? We'll see. So what's the halacha? Shomen lo. Rabbi say essentially any time someone comes forward and says, I have the ability to be malamed schus on the defendant, or the defendant says, but Pashas, that's what the Mishnah is saying, I have the ability to be malamed schus on myself, we listen. We're all ears. Any opportunity ultimately to acquit, any opportunity ultimately again to go ahead and be malamed schus, we take it. Ubilvad shiish mamish b'dvarav. As long as there is mamish b'dvarav, as long as ultimately again the individual actually something significant to say. Again, obviously we're going to explain all of these phrases in the Gemara. Mimatzalo schus. Suppose if it turns out that they were able to find a schus for the defendant, patrua. In other words, that's another way of saying if they were able to acquit him, they acquitted him. Good, done. Vimlav. I will say, what happens if after the proceedings they are unable to acquit the defendant? So what do? Ma'avirin oso lemachar. I will say a Sanhedrin never condemns, nor I should say, never finds a defendant guilty that day. If it turns out that they see that the way the court is tilting is that it's going to be a guilty verdict, the first thing they do is they say, okay, we're not ruling on this today. We're going to wait on this until tomorrow. So what happens after court is over? Umizdavgin zugos zugos. So we'll say this is very fascinating. What the judges of the Sanhedrin then do is they break off in pairs. Now, why do they break off pairs? Essentially, they discuss the case with one another, but they discuss the case in smaller groups. Zugos, they make like a chavrusa. So they break off in smaller groups. Right? Rashi says over here, Mizdavgin b'yom ishon la'achar shaviru l'dun b'makam yeshiva hayu mizdavgin b'batein o b'shuk v'nosim adavar. It's interesting. It's sometimes like in an American court, especially if you're part of the jury, you're not supposed to discuss it when it's not. So here it's interesting. We dafka want the Dayanim to go home, and we want them to discuss it more, talk about it with each other more. And what happens? So we'll say they would eat very little. Now again, we're also going to discuss when this is applying to. They would eat less than normal, and they would not drink wine kol hayom that entire day. V'nosin kol halayla, and they would literally go ahead and think about the case that entire night. I will say, now what that means is, it seems to be the progression is after court adjourned, they'd break off in smaller pairs, and they would go ahead and discuss the case amongst themselves. But the Mishnah is saying, Dayan, I want you to be up all night tossing and turning about this. I mamish want you thinking about this all night. Ulamacharas, the next morning, mashkimin uban lebezdin, they would get up and come to bezdin. Hamezake omarni hamezake, umezake ani bimkomi. So the one who yesterday already found the defendant innocent would say, still find the defendant innocent, and I remain in my stance. The mechayiv, the one who found him guilty, would say, ani mechayiv umechayiv ani bimkomi. So we'll say, if they came back to Bezdin, everybody just had their same opinions. So fine, everybody would just simply restate their opinions. Hamelamed chova, melamed tzros. Now we'll say, if yesterday one of the Dayanim found the defendant guilty, he is permitted to switch his opinion today and find him innocent. About hamelamed tzros, we'll say, this is like wild. This is wild. You can't change your mind. If yesterday you went on record, you were going on record who said that what? I find the defendant innocent, you cannot change your mind the next day. So we'll say, what happens if they ultimately again made a mistake? Good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. So again, I will say, we will see ultimately again what this is, but Pashtos, let's say one of the judges the next day, when recounting or remembering his opinion, made a mistake about what he said the previous day. Shnei Sovre Hadayonan Maskirin also. Remember again, I will say, we ultimately, whether we have 2 or 3 scribes, there is a court stenographer. So if one of the Dayanim made a mistake about his previously espoused position, so the scribe would remind him about his mistake. So we'll say, if after these deliberations they found him innocent, they acquitted him and he went on his way. We'll say, if not, they take a vote. So so we'll say, this is talking about a Sanhedrin Akatan, 23 judges. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So if you have 23 judges, if you have 12 who acquit and 11 ultimately who say that he's guilty. So again, easy. Zakai, you have a majority who acquitted, that's enough. They will say, what happens if 12 found guilty and 11 acquitted? So we'll say, remember again, you can't condemn, you can't find guilty by a simple majority of 1. You need at least, as we saw in the beginning of the Masech, a majority of at least 2 in order to go ahead and condemn. So what do we do? Or even if you had 11 say guilty, 11 say innocent, and 1 says I don't know, those are the halachically equivalent. This is amazing. Let's say you have 22 judges who say guilty, and 1 judge says I don't know. What the Mishnah is pointing out over here is the following: whether you only have a simple majority of 1, or whether you have a tie, or whether you have or you have just one of the judges who says I don't know, They both say as soon as you don't have one judge voting, he's recused himself. Remember again, a non-vote is as if you don't exist. If you don't have an opinion, you don't exist. So the mice, again, what do we do? At that point in time, we have to add on more dayanim onto the basin. We saw this process already in the beginning of the Masechta. So what happens? Yosifu hadayanim. Rabbi said, then they begin to add judges onto the Sanhedrin. The Kalam Mosifin. Rabbi said, whenever we add shnayim. We add in increments of 2, ad shivim be'echad, until ultimately, again, we get to 71. So let's say we start adding judges. Now we tally the votes. Shloshem ushisha mizakin. So if 36 say innocent and 35 say guilty, then wonderful. Zakai, he's innocent. So what happens if 36 say guilty, 35 say innocent? That's the problem, because remember, you can't convict by a simple majority of one. Then, so here's the problem. What's the problem? If you have 36 versus 35, right? If you have 36 versus 35, so you have now, let me see different. 36 saying guilty, 35 saying innocent. What's the problem? The problem is you can't convict. The problem is, however, again, it's also hard to exonerate. The other problem is you can no longer add on more judges because 71 is the cap. So how do you resolve this? So watch this. This is amazing. Done in elu keneged elu ad shira echem and amachayv divrei hamazakin. So we'll say, what do? They deliberate and deliberate until one of the judges who originally held guilty switches teams and holds innocent. And once he holds innocent, then what they're saying, then you have a majority of 2, and ultimately the defendant is acquitted. Absolutely amazing. Anybody would look at this and say, this is so ridiculously slanted. And the answer is correct. The answer is correct. That clearly you see that built into the system itself is a desire ultimately, again, to ketnebos, and you have to understand something. So the reason also we believe this is because at the end of the day, there is another dayan, right? There's the dayan ha'emes. So we're not concerned that, let's say, what about the fact that there's going to be a travesty of justice? So you know what? If it turns out that chas v'shalom, the person really is guilty, the Ribbon Shalom has a way of settling all of the different scores. Says the Gemara. Both say, from where do we know this? In other words, now the Gemara is asking, from where do we know ultimately again that there are 7 different chakiros? Where do we know that there are 7 different questions? Amar Yehuda, Ramar Krasser, Yehuda quotes the name of the pasuk. So we'll say the Gemara quotes over here 3 pesukim by 3 different episodes. We're going to see one of them is by Yer Nidachos, which is the city wiped out for idolatry. One of them is going to be by a person who worships Avodah Zarah, and one of them is going to be by Edim Zomavim. So each of them have similar lashonos of v'darashta v'chakarta. So the pasuk is Damakra v'darashta v'chakarta v'sha'alta hetev. So it's like, well, let me read the psukim, then I'll tell you the drashas. V'omer v'ugad l'cha v'shamata v'darashta hetev. V'omer v'darsha shoftim hetev. So we'll say, just because of time, the way the Gemara is darshaning this is the following. From the first pasuk, v'darashta v'chakarta and hetev. That's 3. Rashi points out we don't use sha'alta in this drasha. From the second pasuk, v'darashta hetev is another 2, and from the last pasuk of v'darshu hetev is another 2. So when you put all of that together, you get 7. And from here we see Rabbi said that when it comes down, remember all of these are capital cases, right? Edim Zomi can be capital cases. Yarni Dachas is a capital case. Enidachos is a capital case. Avodah Zarah is a capital case. So you see from here that what? That there are Sheva Chakiros. That ultimately, again, there are 7 probing questions in order to arrive at the truth. I'm a base. But I don't understand. Why don't I just say that each a situation or each of these halachos has the corresponding number of Chakiros based on the words in its respective parsha. In other words, I will say, instead of putting this all together, why don't I say for Ir Nidachos, so the Eidim require this number of questions in accordance with its pasuk. Eidim Zomer require this number of Chakiros in accordance with its pasuk. Avodah Zarah requires this number of Chakiros with this pasuk. Din came lichtavinu rachmana b'chado. If that's the case, let the Torah go ahead and write it all together. Let the Torah write it in one pasuk. Kevan the kulu bahadi hadodik siva. But since ultimately, again, they're all written in proximity to each other, therefore, again, mehadodi yalfi. Then ultimately, they will all be learned out from one another. V'chivan di yalfi mehadodi. And since we're going to learn out each of these episodes from one another, keman dechsiv bechada dami. Ultimately, again, it's as if they are in reality written in one pasuk. I v'halo dami lahadadi. But one second, you are comparing 3 dissimilar concepts. How so? Sirni Dachos, we'll say again, the city condemned to Avodah Zarah, to be obliterated because of Avodah Zarah, does not resemble the other two cases. How so? Shekin Mamon on Palat. See, both say, in the case of Sirni Dachos, everything is destroyed. Not only the people, but all of the property of the city as well. Masha'inke, in the other two cases, the perpetrator is killed, or the perpetrators are killed, but Lamaisa, their property is spared. Avodah Zarah v'hanach tarti. So the case of Avodah Zarah is not comparable to the other two cases. Why not? Shekin b'sayif, because we'll say ultimately Avodah Zarah is the punishment for Avodah Zarah is carried out with sayif, as opposed to the other two cases. Edim zomimin. We'll say the third case of Edim zomin lahanach tarti lo is not comparable to the other two cases. Why not? Shekin tzrichim hasra, because we'll say ultimately again, Edim zomin requires hasra, whereas the other ones do not. So we'll say, how can you compare three dissimilar cases to each other? To which the Gemara says, "Behetiv hetiv yalfina mehadadi." We'll say, in reality, the common quote unquote gezerah shava link to link all of them is going to be the presence of the word hetiv. Hetiv appears ultimately again in all of these circumstances, and lamaisa hetiv is also an extraneous word. It is unnecessary in all three of these circumstances. Creates the bridge between all three of these circumstances, therefore allows you to look at all three of these psukim as one entity, and therefore allows me to dash out the 7 words from all three circumstances, ultimately again to teach me Sheva Hakiros. So the Gemara says, and by the way, this is Gzera Shava Mufna. What does this mean? And we'll say Gzera Shava Mufna. We've spoken about this many times throughout our journeys in Shas. Gzera Shava Mufna means like this. Gzera Shava means you find the same word in 2 different circumstances, and it allows you to go ahead and create a halachic bridge between those 2 concepts. However, for that to work, the word or the phrase being used for the Gzera Shava must be mufna, must be open, i.e., cannot be used for something else. So Gemara is just pointing out over here that the hetiv Gzera Shava ultimately is mufna, dilo mufna, because if it wasn't open, then what? Ikal mifrach. I could go ahead and make a pircha. I can ask a kasha on the Gzera Shava, to which I can ask a kasha on the Gzera Shava. To which Gemara says, you're right. Afnuye mufna. You are indeed right that the hetiv ultimately again is open for Gzera Shava purposes. How so? The pasuk could have just said v'darshu v'chakru. I didn't even need the word hetiv at all. Yet v'shani kra v'dibure behetiv. Yet the pasuk goes out of its way to also include the word hetiv. Shmamin alachnuye. Therefore, you see the Torah is coming to include what would at first glance appear to be a redundant word. For what purpose? Only to simply allow us to go ahead and make the Gzera Shava in order to allow us to learn the din of the Sheva Hakiros. But one second, it's only open on one side. In other words, as we're going to see a little bit later on, that word hetiv is used in certain circumstances for a drasha, so it's only open quote unquote from one of the sides. We'll discuss which side. So bishlamach hani tarti. So when it comes to Edim Zomin and Avodah Zarah muflahu, so that word hetiv is extraneous. Why? Mishum dahave lemichtav. Because ultimately, again, the pasuk could have just said v'sha'alta v'chakarta ela irani dachas my havile lemichtav. But Rabbi said irani dachas. What else should the pasuk have said? Haksiva kulu. The pasuk needed to go ahead. The pasuk writes all of the different lashonos. Hasam nami afnuye mufna. To which the Gemara answers, there also the hetiv is open. How so? Midahavile lemichtav darosh tidrosh. Or let's say first wide line. Or chakar tachkar. The pasuk could have just said darosh tidrosh or chakar tachkar. In other words, saying the idea of hetiv indicates that you need a thorough investigation. But you could have made that point without the word hetiv, by simply stressing the already used word. Darosh tidrosh, chakar tachkor. That would have impressed upon me the need for a thorough investigation. I don't need the word hetiv. Elamai, the word hetiv is extraneous. But it's not really extraneous because it's here to teach you the Gzera Shava. That links Irni Dachas, Avodah Zarah, Idim Zomimin. Why do I want to link all 3 of those? Because then I could use the collective words of all of those psukim, the Chakarta, the Sha'alta, the Darashta, which allows me to arrive at 7 words. And it gives you the 7 Chakiros. V'shani Krabdi Bore Behetiv. Ultimately, again, the Torah goes out of its way to use the word hativ, and it's only there again to create an extraneous word that's open, that's not used for any other drasha, in order that I could use it for the Gzera Shava. And therefore, again, the Gemara says, and I can learn out the penalties punishable by chenek from the penalties punishable by skila, and ultimately, again, the punishments that are executed by hereg, that are and I can also go ahead and learn out the punishments, or I should say, I can learn out those penalties that are punishable by sreifa from a kal v'chomer from skila, to which the Gemara says, that makes sense according to Rabban who say that skila is more chamer. And the Reb Shimon who says that sreifa is more chamer than skila, then what are you going to say? To which the Gemara says, listen to this, Rabbosai. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda says, there's another phrase. The phrase is, it's the same pasuk. V'darashta v'chakarta v'sha'alta heitev v'hine emes nachon hadavar. Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says, it says that pasuk twice. V'hine emes nachon hadavar. To which the Gemara says, ha chad sri. So Rabbosai, Rabbi Yehuda understands that v'hine emes nachon hadavar, that represents another two questions, another two potential chakiros. That pasuk is mentioned twice. That gives you another 4. That ultimately leads to 7 potential chakiros. To which the Gemara says, "Ha chodsri sheva l'sheva chakiros." So let's now go back and analyze the lashonos. So 7 of the lashonos will be used to teach you 7 of the chakiros. Dal plus l'gzeir shava. Take away 3 of them. Three of the words ultimately as the hative words necessary for gzeir shava. Pashal echada. Ultimately leaves you with one extraneous word. The Reb Shimon la'asuyin nisrafin. So according to Reb Shimon, I will say that I'll teach you the din of nisrafin. The Rabbanan ultimately milsad da'asya b'kal v'chomer tarach v'kasav l'kra. According to the Rabbanan, even though I could have learned this out by a kal v'chomer, nevertheless, I will say the Torah goes out of its way to write it. Megadef ba Rabbi Yavo. Rabbi Yavo was very upset with this drasha. I will say Megadef ba Rabbi Yavo. Literally means Rabbi Yavo cursed this. He was very upset with this drasha. Ema la'asuyin shmona chakiros. Maybe Rabbi said the extra word or the extra phrase that you just brought up is there to teach you not only there are not 7 chakiros, but rather what? There are 8 chakiros. Then Rabbi said, now what would the 8th chakira be? So the Gemara says, listen to this. Ushmona chakiros miga. So, but the Mishnah said there's only 7 chakiros. Where would you get an 8th chakira from? Alamalo, why not? There could be an 8th chakira. How so? We will say now what would the 8th chakira? Listen to this. Va'ika la'asuye bikama b'shah. You remember they mentioned this in the Mishnah? The Mishnah's chakira of be'ez shah means what hour of the day. Rabbi Yehuda is suggesting, or Rabbi Yavo is suggesting, maybe there's an 8th chakira. What's the 8th chakira? How many minutes into the hour? How many minutes? What time? What time? So bekama b'shah. How much into the hour? The Tainayach. It was your Brisa that supports this. You both can also b'shmona chakiros. The Rebbe said there is a Brisa that says that in fact there are 8 chakiros. And the 8th question would be bekama b'shah. Exactly what time? So I'll say this makes sense according to Abaye, who says that Abaye's position to Meir is there is no margin of error. People can be absolutely precise. People can know exactly what time it is without a margin of error. According to the other version of Abaye, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a person could err up to a half hour. According to Rabbi, who says that people could err, this on the Mishnah, people could err even up to 2 hours. Then how would this 8th chakira of kama b'shah be helpful in any way? Ella la'asuye v'kama v'yovel. Rather, it must be coming to include the question of kama b'yovel. We'll define this in just a moment. So, 1 second. Hainu be'eza shavua. Is that not the same question as what year of the Yovel cycle? Now, also what's interesting about this is we track, or at least they did track, the number of Yovel. This is the X number Yovel since we came into Eretz Yisrael. So according to this opinion, there was an 8th question. The 8th question was not only what year during the Yovel cycle, not only what year during the Shemitah cycle, but what the 8th Chakira would be. What Yovel cycle is this? What Yovel cycle are we in? V'idach, kevanar be'eza shavua lo by be'eza Yovel. But the other opinion ultimately said, once already the 8 says what year of the Shemitah cycle we're in, we don't care what Yovel cycle we're in. That doesn't mean that level of information is simply irrelevant. So I'll say, so bottom line, halacha, so what do we walk away with this from? What do we walk away with? 7 chakiros. That's the take-home message over here. 7 questions. Where do we learn the 7 chakiros from? They both say based on Gzeir Shava, and it's really Gzeir Shava that combines the Lashonos of 3 separate concepts. The concept of the Yer Nidachos, the condemned city for Avodah Zarah, Eidim Zomin, witnesses who are proved to be false, and the Oved Avodah Zarah, one who worships idolatry. Through the extra Gzeir Shava of Heitiv, we're able to combine all those psukim. We're able then to go ahead and combine their various Lashonos, Darashta, Chakarta, Sha'alta, and ultimately we're able to arrive at 7 Lashonos. Those 7 Lashonos teach us that, I will say, for capital cases, we have 7 different chakiros. Good. Let's go a little bit weiter. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says the following. Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah said, all you need is what? 3 questions. Right? You don't need all of these questions. Rabbi Yossi says, tell me what day, is a yom, is a shah, is a makom. Give me a date, a time, location. That's all I need for testimony. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Chachamim, l'divreichem, misha bava amar emesh hargu. So Rabbi Yossi says, according to what you said, someone who came yesterday, someone who came and said, "Va'amar emesh hargu." Yesterday I saw Reuven kill Shimon. Omer lo be'eza shavua, be'eza shana, be'eza chodesh, be'kama b'chodesh. So Rabbi Yossi says, "I don't understand you guys, right? A witness shows up in Beis Din, right? Witness shows up and they say, yesterday we saw Reuven kill Shimon." You're then going to ask him. You're then going to ask him, well, what year of the Yovel cycle was this? You're going to ask him, what year of the Shemitah cycle did this happen? What was the year? What was the month? What was the date? He just told you, I saw this yesterday. In other words, why do you have to administer all of the other questions? So Amrlo, the Chacham said back to Rabbi Yossi, L'dvarecha, Misha ba'achshav va'amar. Amrulo, Lidvarach, Rabbi Yossi, according to your logic, Misha ba va'amar achshav hargu. What if witnesses show up and say, we literally just saw Reuven kill Shimon a second ago, 2 minutes ago? Omerlo, do we ask him be'ez yom u'be'ez shah u'be'ez makom? In other words, what the Chacham said back to Rabbi Yossi is, okay, so tell me if somebody comes to visit and say, we just saw Reuven kill Shimon. Rabbi Yossi, does it make sense for you to ask him what day did it happen, what time did it happen, where did it happen? But rather say the Rabbi Yossi, it's understood, I will say, that when it comes to questioning witnesses, yes, sometimes we ask questions that are not necessary, but we ask it nevertheless. Why? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. I will say, in accordance to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, I will say, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rashi points out over here, 6 lines up from the bottom of Rashi, La Tricham, the Amar Masin, Hayu Esaidim Makom Lamakom, Kadesh Titrav Daitan Alabexon. Shimon is one who said we ask as many questions as possible. For what purpose, Rabbi? To confuse the witnesses, to confuse them. We want, meaning we know the more we ask, the more they get confused, the more they contradict each other, the easier it is to go ahead and throw out the testimony. Hachinami, Afagav Lo Tzarech Ramina Lalek, there's Shimon Elazar. So to the Chacham say, Rabbi Yossi, you're right. Even if witnesses show up and say, yesterday we saw Reuven kill Shimon, we're still going to ask them all the questions. What year of the Yovel cycle? What year of the Shemitah cycle? What month? What day? What hour? So Rabbi Yossi will say, Emesh Harushia. Rabbi Yossi says, Chachamim, your comparison is not fair. At the end of the day, for witnesses to come up and show up in Beis Din and say, we saw Reuven kill Shimon yesterday, that's a common occurrence. In other words, that's reasonable. Berov Edios, Achshav Hargu Lo Shiach Berov Edios. Rabbi say to say that witnesses are going to show up in Beis Din and say, literally, we just saw Reuven kill Shimon. So Lemais, again, that's not a common situation. So Yossi is going to say, in a case where somebody's coming to testify yesterday, that's common. In a case where somebody's going to come in and say, I just saw somebody kill someone else. Right now, that's not common. Therefore, my shaila on you is legitimate. Your shaila on me is not legitimate. Rabbi say, bottom line, the Rambam Paskins like the Chachamim. And in fact, again, we don't take the shortened questioning of Rabbi Yossi of just time, date, and location, but rather we go through the more exhaustive Sheva Chakiros, ultimately of the Rabbanim. We'll stop over here for today. I'll share with you a short idea on the Parsha, just in the few minutes we have. So we'll say there are many, many beautiful psukim that we have in this week's Parsha. So amongst them, the Torah says, what appears to be at first glance a simple pasuk, yet again, when we think about it, we're overcome with its profundity. Torah Kedusha says, "Tamim tiyam Hashem Elokecha." Literally, again, you should be tamim with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Mefarshim struggle to understand what does that mean. Although sometimes there's a reflex to translate tamim as perfect, we understand that can't be what it means. Why? Because the Ribono Shel Olam never demands perfection of us, never asks perfection of us. So Rashi HaKadosh comments on the pasuk, and Rashi says, "Tamim tiyayim Hashem Elokecha" means v'lo sachkar achar ha'asidos. Because remember, again, right before Tamim tiyayim Hashem Elokecha, Torah speaks about not consulting the Ovi Yidoni. So the Ovi Yidoni were sorcerers; they communicated with the dead, and their entire purpose was to try to go ahead and tell the future. So Ribono Shel Olam says, don't worry about the future. Tamim tiyam Hashem Elokecha. Just be confident with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything's going to be okay. Interestingly enough, Onkelos translates Tamim tiyam Hashem Elokecha as shlim. He says Tamim shlim, to be complete with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But still, we know that it means something profound and amazing. But it's a mitzvah, meaning we assume it's a mitzvah to be tam with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean? So there's a beautiful insight by Rav Levi Yitzchak. So Rav Levi Yitzchak Rebbe says, I'm just going to quote it to you. He says, you have to read the pasuk, you have to put the comma in a different place. He says, Hainu, im tiya im Hashem Elokecha, tiya tamim, velo tehe chaser shum davar. In other words, what? It says the Rebbe. The way you have to read the pasuk is like this. Tamim tiya. If you want to feel a sense of completion in life, if you want to feel a sense of wholeness in life, all of us want to, so we'll say, all of us feel a void in some way. Man by definition often feels a void. And we often spend life filling that void. The problem is, we often fill that void with all of the wrong things, right? A person thinks, if I only had more money, right, I would be so much happier. So what happens? Halabai, a person should be zocha. Kodesh Baruch Hu gives him the gift of parnasa. And then what happens? You have more money, which is certainly wonderful. Halabai, we should all be zocha, right? Makes life easier in many different ways, but it doesn't fill the void. So I think to myself, if I had this experience, it would fill the void. But yet again, it doesn't fill the void. And a person could go through life trying to fill the void with thing after thing after thing, and yet I emerge and it's still not filled. Says Rebbe, there's a very simple formula. Tamim tiya, like Onkelos says, shlim. If you want to be complete in life, there's only one way. Im Hashem Elokecha. A content life is a life that centers and focuses around the Ribono Shel Olam. A content life is the one in which the Ribono Shel Olam plays a dominant role. Says the Rebbe, ultimately, it's not a tzivui tamim tiyam Hashem Elokecha, be complete with God, but rather, again, says Rav Levi Yitzchak, it is a formula for successful living. Again, the beauty of Chassidus is you just have to know where to place the comma. Tamim tiya. If you want to be complete in life, you want to feel whole, you want to feel shalom, then im Hashem Elokecha. Then just try to live life with the Ribono Shel Olam. We'll say, now, what does this mean? Rabbi Levi Yitzchak has another vart in the parsha, which I think we could bring together in the 1 minute we have. The pasuk says earlier on, "V'lo sakim locha matzeva." V'lo sakim locha matzeva. Do not establish a matzeva for yourself. So again, what's the matzeva? So matzeva, v'lo sakim locha matzeva asher sanei Hashem Elokecha. The matzeva is a one stone altar. So Torah says, do not establish for yourself a one stone altar, rather make a mizbeach avanim, a multi-stone altar. Why that is, we're not going to get into right now. So the Mefarshim pick up on a very interesting idea about that pasuk. The pasuk is lo sakim locha matzeva. Why doesn't it just say what? Lo sakim matzeva. Don't make a matzeva. Don't make this one stone altar. Why lecha? And again, I believe Yitzchak says something magnificently beautiful. The pasuk is saying, lo sakim lecha matzeva. Don't make the lecha, don't make yourself into an altar. What does that mean, says the Rebbe? That sometimes a person thinks that life is about making me happy. That the goal of a successful life is that I am content. The goal of a successful life is that I am happy. Everything centers around me. When everything centers around me, Rabbi Osai, I've just made the lecha, I've just made the me into a matzeva. The Rebbe says, Osakim locha matzeva. And it turns out that life is this dialectic. Who is it that my life revolves around? Does my life revolve around me, or does my life revolve around the Ribono Shalom Tamim Tia Im Hashem Elokecha? Rabbi said, this is the major question we have to ask ourselves. At the end of the day, who is the center of my universe? Is it me, my needs, my wants? Or do I find that my mission is Ribono Shel Olam, I'm your man, I'm your soldier, and I want to make a relationship with you and the connection with you of paramount importance in life. These are the choices we make every single day. Lo sakim l'chamat seva, I'm the center of the universe, or do I want to finally feel shalom? And if I want to feel shalom in my life, then there's only one way that comes up, say. And I'll never come through anything I buy, never through anything I acquire, never through anything I earn. But timimos, shleimus, completion and true happiness only comes about im Hashem Elokecha, with a meaningful and beautiful relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I will say, this is the month to work on it. Chodesh Elul, again, we'll discuss it more in coming weeks, but Chodesh Elul in many respects has even greater Kiddusha than Yamim Noraim. Chodesh Elul is the month of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. It's an opportunity to reignite and to reinvigorate our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it begins with asking ourselves one simple question. Who is at the center of my universe? Is it me or is it the Ribono Shalom? If it's me, I got to stop occupying that space and start allowing my life to revolve around the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And halavai, if we make that decision and we organize our priorities just a little bit, it will be zocha to the greatest bracha of all. Not the bracha of any of the physical or material brachas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, which hopefully He should give us, but the greatest bracha of all, which is the bracha of tamim, a feeling of completion in life, a feeling of wholeness in life, that feeling that only comes through beautiful connection. Topic
from the Siva Shalom. Siva Shalom says, Anochius cannot exist without
I didn't hear the first time.
The Siva Shalom says, Anochius cannot exist together with the Rebbeinu. Exactly. It's not enough. That's the
This morning, in the bottom of Amun Aleph, where we said that the Beis Din was told to deliberate overnight.